Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday lunchtime series on showcasing supply diversity. My name is Sandra D'Souza and I'm your host. I'm the founder of Ellect, and Ellect is a digital marketplace that connects small businesses with corporate buyers. We are very much passionate about social impact, so every transaction contributes towards gender equality. Well, I'm very excited to have here Andi Lucas from NSP Development. Hi, Andi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm not sure whether it's a show, but I'll just call it a show. But so a wonderful LinkedIn
it feels
interview.
like a show.
Yeah. And we're live as well, so you know what's and all, what goes on.
Right.
Look, for those who know me, I don't like reading out bios because I always believe in authenticity. And I would love for Andi, if you could share with us a little bit of your professional, I guess, background.
Yeah, I suppose I sort of find it difficult to do the elevator pitch because I've had a very patchy and, I guess, interesting life. I was born and raised in Tasmania, so I lived here until I was 18 years old, and then did a bit of a stint of travelling for 5 years in Europe, and then came back to Tasmania and lived for 8 years, did my university degree where I studied political science and environmental studies, and then proceeded to go and open a nightclub because that's a really logical step. My first experience of running a business, and it wasn't small, and it was certainly not a success under any measure, but an enormously educational experience to do that. Then I moved to the United States and lived in America for the last decade. During that period of time, I worked with a founder who had invented a product, and we basically co-founded a business together. And I ran that business on his behalf and became a partner in that business. And we sold that at the end of 2018. So cut my teeth in the world of nightclub entertainment, and then moved into plastic injection molded manufacturing. And during that second vastly different professional experience, I made the decision that whatever I did next professionally, it really had to be something that I was deeply passionate about and that sort of spoke to my value set and the things that I'm interested in the world. Gender equality certainly is right up there in my top three. Environmental issues, welfare equality, that's where I'm absolutely passionately interested in all of those things. And I suddenly thought, well, if I've had some experience now running businesses, that I can bring that experience into this sector, which is pretty much where I landed now. So,
which is great. I mean, you bring that wealth of experience of having run a couple of businesses. I mean, you're technically a serial entrepreneur. So
I think it's official on business number 4. I think that's how they classify someone who's actually got a problem at that point. Yeah.
I thought it's more than one, but we'll go with that still. But look, tell us now that you've landed in Tasmania and you wanted to create something, obviously with social impact. Tell us about your business.
Well, a couple of years ago, sort of towards the tail end of my last company where we sold camera accessories, professional video accessories, and I was going through that sort of very deep thinking about what I wanted to do next, all roads for me sort of led me back to the world of industrial hemp. So it was something that I knew less than nothing about. I didn't even honestly know that hemp is the common name for the botanical name of cannabis. I didn't even have that sort of connection in my own mind. So I was about as knowledgeless, if that's a word. I actually had a couple of critical life experiences. In 2013, I lost my house in a bushfire in Tasmania, and in the same year, actually lost my apartment in Colorado in a flood. So it was a double header natural disaster year for me, 2013. And from that sort of, obviously profoundly impacting experience, and it's one that more and more humans are going to be having and are having over the years that we're living through now with the climate crisis. I think that having those two very direct experiences in the two countries that I was living in, this very privileged world of travelling back and forth between my native home and my adopted homeland of America, through that process I really came to realise that there's a lot of very dangerous chemicals in most building materials, and so I was drawn towards natural building materials. So my entry point into industrial hemp, often people are really fascinated by the food side of things or the medicinal side of things. But for me, it was really just about the fibre and using that fibre for natural building. So I made a very strategic decision at the end of 2018 that my next career would be in industrial hemp, but I didn't sort of know what that would exactly look like. And so I was very lucky. I've had a really amazing pathway to where I am now. I went to a summit in Kathmandu in Nepal in early 2019 that was hosted by Hemp Today magazine, with sort of the organisers of that. I then started writing freelance occasionally for Hemp Today, which has been a wonderful attraction because I'm meeting experts and very intelligent people who have been doing this for a long time. And then when I returned to Tasmania last December, in December 2019, I approached the Tasmanian Hemp Association and asked if I could assist them. And I became the executive officer of that group in April of this past year. So I've been serving very happily in a part-time capacity as the executive officer for the Tas Hemp Association, which are a fantastic group who represent about 75 or 80% of the hemp in Australia is grown in my home state, and we represent the growers who grow that crop. So I sort of had a bit of a pathway to get there, and from that came upon a business case to buy a processing machine to process straw in Tasmania to turn it into those building materials that I'd been so drawn to, years ago. So it's been an amazing sort of circular journey.
It has.
Yeah. So,
and it's also
it's a really exciting
passion.
time.
It is.
That's right. There's not a single day that I'm not doing something that I'm just learning, which I absolutely love. So even though it's very busy, it's just been, very exciting. There's not a moment of boredom, that's for sure.
I can see that. You live a very fulfilling life, and you could easily have said, "Yep, that's it. I'm just going to sit by the beach." But you've jumped onto a massive project. So is this? So what's the name of the business under the hemp? Because I know that's different.
So
in this
It is, and I've done that very specifically and strategically. So NSP development, the little acronym stands for Nevertheless She Persisted, because I do like that rallying cry for women around the world. That very much is my sort of personal philosophy, to be honest. I think, persistence and resilience are two sort of characteristics that I've prided myself on, that, when life throws you a couple of curveballs, just to have the, a bit of luck and the capacity to be able to bounce back. So NSP development is really the company banner that I do my own sort of bits of work. So things like consulting for the Tas Hemp Association, or I've got a role as the support event manager for the next national conference, the Australian Industrial Hemp Conference. So I'm doing some different work there. I created a new entity called X-Hemp, so X-Hemp, and that is the entity, it's a proprietary limited that will actually own the asset of the processing unit, and it's very much has been set up for the purpose of scaling up. So that will be an entity that when we do our next capital raise, that will be an equity sort of situation then, and looking at bringing in bigger partners. But so to start that as a separate entity to NSP, I want to keep that as a little encapsulated business that's standalone. And so we actually just placed the order for X-Hemp for the processing machine last Friday. So
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Successfully raised the capital. We've got 18 investors who have come on board in this first round, which is just wonderful, and ordered the machine from Ashford Industrial up in New South Wales. So an Australian couple who are making this machine based off a prototype that they've developed. So it's a really exciting project.
This is a great Australian story, and using, I guess, from one of the reasons I guess I've embarked on the whole supply diversity is that from a supply chain perspective, you need to start looking at what's available within the country due to border restriction and travel restrictions, and the fact that you found the equipment and the prototype. So there must be obviously, can I dare to ask that it's a leading edge type of technology, what they're able to do?
Well, look, the irony is, and the lovely people who own Ashford, Connie and her husband Leon Minos, great people, they actually don't, they're not promoting it as leading edge technology. It's really just a really functional piece of farming equipment. So there's a lot of products out there on the market. What's happening in Europe and the northern parts of America, multi-million-dollar decortication machines that are incredibly sophisticated. But they're incredibly sophisticated because it's a fully developed industry in those places. Whereas we've just come on board in Australia. Our legislation is lagging so desperately behind the rest of the world. We're nowhere near what our trading partners are doing. Canada's about 20 years ahead of us. So they've got huge areas of broadacre production. We've got very small area of production. There's not enough biomass to support one of these sophisticated mills, in my opinion, at the moment in Australia. So I very specifically have decided to buy not a particularly sophisticated piece of equipment, but one that we are sure works. The Ninoses have actually been processing hemp straw and selling the product, and it's been put into houses, and I know those houses have been built. So there's a simplicity to that and a confidence. I'm actually also building, because I'm not busy enough, Sandra, so I thought I'd take on a few extra projects. So
I can see that.
I'm actually building a couple of small hempcrete cottages personally for my own personal portfolio. So I'll also be a customer of X-Hemp, and that certainly is a very strong motivator to make sure that you're getting it right.
Exactly. And like you said, I mean, you got me thinking that the processing doesn't necessarily have to be leading edge. But it's important for the proven concept or the proven materials that can be used as building materials, and that is safe, and as well as being, sustainable, environmentally sustainable approach to using such materials.
That's right. And even though hempcrete, which is sort of the commonly known word to describe hemp lime construction, it's been around for many, many thousands of years. It's literally found in the mortar of Hadrian's Wall. It's been found in temples in Southeast Asia back to the 1300s. This is a material that humans have been using for a long time. But in the modern context, we have to talk about safety codes, different regulations, state by state, government by government. And I think for me, the critical thing right now is making this become a really commonly and well understood natural building material. It's such an amazing product, and I really encourage people to go down the rabbit hole of Googling hempcrete, because there's lots of great videos out there. But it's the things that are so important for me, apart from the fact that it's sequestering carbon through the growing cycle and then continues to sequester carbon through the actual building itself, so it can become close to carbon sort of neutral building, which is vitally important, I think. Is that it actually is fire resistant. So for bushfire and wildfire prone areas, of which there are more and more around the world, that's a huge characteristic. It meets and exceeds most tests for modern building materials for fire resistance. It also has the ability to allow water vapour to pass through it. So it doesn't mould. You don't have antibacterial. People who have allergies find it to be an amazing material to build with. So for me, having this sort of not particularly sophisticated machine, which I've jokingly coined the choppy, smashy, because it is a piece of equipment. It really does. It's pretty just do those two functions. What it's producing is bags of product that can immediately be used by builders. And what's so exciting for me is that I've got purchase orders waiting from customers who are ready to build with hempcrete and have been waiting for a secure supply of the raw material, which is called hurd. And X-Hemp's about to be delivering that to them in the early part of next year. So it's a really exciting thing to be part of.
It is very exciting. And I guess if I could take it back to the kind of like the purpose of like talking about supply diversity part of it. I mean, this is a woman-owned business. You're delving into building materials, which is obviously not necessarily, it's very much, I'm guessing, a male-dominated industry.
It is.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So Mel, so firstly, I mean, it was certainly fascinating to hear your journey, that you went from nightclub owner to plastic mold injection factory or production. If I get that right, and then now into hemp production and in building materials. So from if you don't mind sharing, I guess from a woman's perspective, how, I mean, I don't even know, not so much how did you get, because you talked about your journey, but it will be good to know that were you daunted by owning your own business and delving into this space, or I can see that you're not a timid type of person.
Did you pick that up?
Just got a hint, but I mean, I think for our audience, it would be great to think like, okay, I really want to own a business and I want to do something that is similar to, I guess, that social impact. Where did you find the courage to do it? And secondly, how are you finding it? I guess, or how did you come to the decision that it's going to be a woman-owned business?
That's a really interesting question, actually. And I think the idea of sort of trying to work out why you might be particularly courageous in one area of your life and not so much in others. I mean, I'm happy to sort of jump out of a plane, but I haven't chosen to have children, so maybe I'm not actually as brave as I'd like to think I am. I think there's bravery of different types, and I think that each of us do our own thing. But I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs at all. I'm the daughter of a teacher and a nurse. I'm also the daughter of a very fierce feminist, so I think that certainly helps. I was born in 1977, so I think it was probably in a Western democracy and with parents who were very progressive in their thinking. And I just don't think I ever considered I had any limitations. I went through the state school education system in Tasmania, which I'm so proud of, and a massive supporter of public education. And I just never ever felt limited. I don't know if that's, what's the nature-nurture debate with that?
No, that's great,
my parenting or just the lucky draw of my birth, geographically where I landed. I think there's a lot of chance to things. But I think that when you're talking about encouraging someone to start, it always sounds a bit sort of cliche and a bit trite, but honestly, the answer is just to start. There's no perfect time. I actually was given some really excellent advice from a very dear friend of mine, the lovely Tony Moore, who was a bit of a guru for me in the early days with his lovely MBA that I didn't ever officially do, but used to get him to tell me about it, where he said, getting it to 80%, because you can just wait for everything to be perfect and you'll never go. You'll never go. So I think as far as good pieces of advice that I've been given, that's probably one of the top three. I just think sometimes you just have to start something. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle then. If you say, this is my business name, I've just registered my business name, I've just bought my domain name, that's the start of something. That makes it tangible, and I think that inspires people. For me, certainly, it motivates me to go on, to the next steps.
Sorry, and I think that's fantastic with like you said, I guess I'm not necessarily using the word courage as a way, but it is courage in a way. I think it's great with what you're doing because you're embarking on the unknown, and not many people, like you said, feel that they need to have everything set up perfectly before they embark on it, and you're just basically giving it a go and seeing how you go. And would you say that you're not so worried about the fear of failure? It's the 80. I love the 80% rule.
I stopped worrying about that a while ago. Otherwise, you never get out of bed.
Exactly. But the 80% rule is great, and that's what I use, by the way, for a lot of stuff, because you can get so much done if you say, look, just get to the 80%, and then see whether it's necessary to complete, or how you complete the 20% will take a lot longer time. So it takes 20% to get to the 80%, but 80% of the time to get to the rest of the 20%.
Very true, yeah. And I think, look, there's a couple of things. One of the things I'm always really cognizant of, and especially after having 10 years living in the United States, is just the privilege of my actual circumstance. I think having been born in a country where I never, ever had to worry about my health care, so I've never been restricted with leaving a job. So, I think there's structural elements that I think, I don't ever want to be flippant and say to people, just leave your job and do a startup, take your chances, I also think that had I not had those two natural disasters happen 7 years ago, I think I'd be an incredibly different version of myself. There's no doubt about that. I think once you've had that concept of losing everything, and I like to do these little finger quotes, because you actually, if you're alive, you haven't lost everything. That was what I came out of that experience understanding. So, but I think that having that and realising that you can bounce back, that money is, effectively just a construct that, yes, it makes life either a lot easier or a lot more difficult, depending on where you're at in the cycle. But I think so. Certainly the courage that's come from having had really challenging things happen and realising it doesn't kill you, then the thought of starting a business and perhaps it's not successful, or starting a business and no one wants to buy the product that you made, or you look like a bit of a twit, I don't really have a lot of I don't actually worry about that. I just feel that, I feel really comfortable about what I'm doing now. And it's interesting, the second part of your question about becoming a female-owned operation. In my first business, I was one of 5 partners, my now ex-husband, my lovely ex-husband, and 4 other male partners. So I was the only woman in that group. And then in my second partnership, it was a male co-founder. And I just really came to the decision that the next enterprise that I did was going to be female-oriented, because it's something I believe in really strongly, especially supporting women who do unpaid work, caring for family members, young and old, and actually creating work environments that support that reality that many, many women in the world are experiencing. And once I firmed that up in my own mind and thought, no, I feel really serious about that. What does that look like? And then I started applying the models and the knowledge that I've sort of gathered in the more traditional business sense. And it works. It is still profitable. It's going to be great, So it's not just a female-owned business. X-Hemp's also a female-operated business. So I'll be employing 2 women to operate the machine. It's not a job that requires huge physical strength, so there's no requirement for there to be a particularly strong human candidate. And I just feel that, it is such a male-dominated world. The 3 sectors: agriculture, construction, and manufacturing. That's probably a bit of a trifecta for the boys, really.
I think it's fantastic.
So I think there's room for it, and there's been enormous support for it in the community here in Tassie as well, which I'm just so thrilled about.
And you also got one more thing, being women-owned and women-led, is that you're in regional Australia as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
very much so.
As well as the agricultural, construction, and the manufacturing.
That's right. Can I tick any more boxes? I know. Ticking bonanza. No. It is really important to me. I think I have chosen to remain childless, but I'm probably one of the only one out of my immediate group of loved ones, my sister and my female friends. And I just see the balance. And I'm talking about working parents. I'm not excluding working dads. But I think the reality is that the working mothers, do have a more difficult, that's demographically, statistically proven, a more difficult time re-entering the workforce. And I just thought, well, if I can successfully run a profitable small enterprise here, by consciously making this decision to support other women, I can do that equally as well. And I might even suggest better, Sandra, but I suppose I better wait until the company's actually up and running.
Well, I was going to say, I cannot wait to hear more about it. And look, time's almost up, so I have to wrap this up, but I could sense that we could just keep talking and talking.
I think that's a possibility,
and just keep this LinkedIn Live interview going for hours and hours. But look, I know we have to wrap this up, but I really appreciate you sharing your story, and also how you've come about doing that. I think it's really inspirational with what you're doing. And ticking all the right boxes, it really means that you are a true inspirational leader and a disruptor in a good sense of what you're trying to achieve. And really, your goal is to help the world to be a much better place. That's really the main goal.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for saying that. Makes me feel a bit embarrassed.
But it's true. And so I think we should definitely watch the space with your progress. Now, if a buyer is interested in the hemp product that you described, what is the best way for them to find you?
Look, at the moment, with my tiny little company, which is just getting off the ground, just go to the website, which is x-hemp.net. So no AU or anything like that. So x-hemp.net. That'll have all the contact information. There's social media platforms, email and a phone number. But certainly more than happy to speak to anyone who wants to learn a bit more.
Fantastic. We'll also try and put those details in the LinkedIn post. And also you're a member of Ellect as well. So there's also
I am a very proud member of Ellect. Yes, very excited to be part of it.
Thank you. So you can also find Andi on Ellect, as well as the details that she's given in x-hemp.net. So thank you, Andi. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate you being on this LinkedIn Live interview /show. So that's it, folks. Next week, we will have another small business owner. We'd like to surprise you to say who will be showing up, but we are looking for, we will have, not looking for, a family-owned business that we would like to talk about. So see you then. In the meantime, enjoy your week. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Sandy.